I just got done reading this book. It's about an ancient civilization and it's 415 pages long. But the thing with this book is that I retained so much information and it's only my first read. In fact, I even have a pile of books and they've all gone the exact same way. The reason I'm able to retain so much is not down to my genetics, but a simple trick I do when reading. The first thing you must understand is that when you struggle to retain information, it's actually down to a simple mechanism in your brain. You see, our focus is very limited. So what we'll do is that we'll switch in between two different modes in our mind. The first mode is full consciousness. This is the mode you flip to when you need to lock in. For example, you're doing an essay or an exam. And the second mode is autopilot mode. This is when you're using TikTok or skimming through the supermarket. It's when your brain is shut off and you're just scrolling through. The reason our brain has this on and off switch is so we can conserve as much mental energy as possible for important tasks like hunting. But this has created a massive problem. The reason you can't retain anything is because your brain has picked up on a certain habit. Basically, everything is designed to flip that switch into autopilot mode. For example, when you scroll on YouTube, bam, flipped. When you skim at the supermarket, bam, flipped. When you see an advertisement, that's going to put you in autopilot mode as well. But this has done something very sinister. It's actually taught your brain to enter into autopilot mode when you're reading, because books can be skimmed just like TikTok. So to combat this, I'm going to give you the exact protocol I use when reading to flip your brain back into flow state mode. The first thing you want to do is that you've probably heard this cliche before, where if you ask someone, how do I read better? They'll always tell you to go pick a good environment. But we're going to do something different. What if we choose an environment so strong that it actually boosts your focus? Luckily, I have just the place. You know nature? There are numerous studies indicating that nature actually boosts your cognitive abilities, which in return increases your focus. And even reading outside on a balcony is good. So what we're going to do is that we're going to read outside, whether that's your backyard, your balcony, or a park. But nature alone isn't enough to solve the problem, because we still have the autopilot mode problem to deal with. But for step 2, we're going to finally address the elephant in the room. When you sit down with your book, you likely still have thoughts running around in your mind. This is as a result of being in autopilot mode. So what we're going to do is that when you're going to start reading, we're going to flip ourselves out of autopilot mode and into flow state mode. But you probably have no idea how to do that. So for this step, to make this work, you're going to put your attention solely on the page and the words. If those thoughts stopped swimming around in your mind and they disappeared, then you've successfully switched back into flow state mode. It's all about setting your full attention on that page. So now that we know how to flip into flow state mode, this is where you'll meet your biggest obstacle. You see, you might stay focused for the first 2 pages, but eventually your brain will flip back into autopilot mode, which will cause you to skim through everything. This problem right here is the reason why people can't retain anything when they're reading. Luckily, I have a solution. The reason your brain flips back into autopilot mode is because your brain is disengaging. It has no idea what it wants out of the book, which means it'll filter out unnecessary information. But there is a way you can easily counter this. To explain step 3, let me tell you a story. When I got this book over here, the Assyrian one, when I bought it, I wanted to learn about Assyrian history, whether that's the culture, the military conquests, but there are certain parts that I found so uninteresting, that being the author's opinions on things or random facts about mythology. This caused me to filter out those parts through skimming. The reason my brain filtered out those parts was because my intentions were set on learning about the empire and not about pagan mythology. However, this had actually helped me a lot because I ended up absorbing 100% of what I wanted to learn, making that my best read ever. This means that when we have certain intentions to read the book, it will change the information that we absorb out of it. For example, another book over here, Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within. This book is about self-help advice, more particularly your mental state. When I read this book, I wanted to learn about mental tricks that could change my life forever. Luckily for me though, that's the entire thing this book was about, so I gained a lot out of it. Now, you might think that you're finished, but there's still one massive problem that will get in your way. You might learn a thing or two from your book, right? But as the day passes, that piece of information will start to fade away and you'll forget it. But this is where the final step comes into play. When you've read maybe a chapter or even a page, you will still have the information held within your brain. So this leaves you with a great opportunity. Basically, whenever I'm done reading, I always recite what I just read, retelling the story and thinking about what I just read and what was the most interesting fact to me. Now, this is how I'm able to retain so much when I'm reading. Subscribe and keep never quitting.